Start until. And we are live. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Jennifer Joe, together with my co-host, Dr. Ami Bhatt with MedTech Insights. We're excited to be coming to you weekly, every Tuesday at 12 noon. Every Tuesday, we bring on two guest leaders in digital health, venture capital, and healthcare innovation. We are a lean production with just me and Ami, and our desire to connect and learn from you and from other great innovators. Healthcare is fast changing. We love hearing from those directly on the ground, creating change, learning from clinicians practicing on the front line. I'm an ER physician, Ami's a cardiologist. We sometimes dive into that. And also from VCs and investors about what they are thinking about and what they think is disrupting healthcare. Of course, please join our mailing list. Look for us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I am getting better at that. And welcome to our show. Ami, over to you.
It's exciting to have everybody here today. There has been a lot of change going on in the digital health world, and it's moving fast. Today's show is going to be all about physician entrepreneurship, clinical entrepreneurship, and how people who start out in the straight and narrow eventually learn to become brilliant entrepreneurs. So I think we're going to have a great discussion today, which will be wonderful. A couple updates on some recent guests that is exciting. So we had the app Simple with us just a few weeks ago. One of our youngest entrepreneurs was on the show, Kunal Gandhi, and we are excited that they actually just received the Duquesne University New Venture Challenge Award, and so they are, more and more awards after the NFL Minority Entrepreneurship, gaining some traction there. We had a great conversation with some people from Patient Ping earlier this week, and they are going to be joining us later on in a couple weeks to talk about their growth and their recent exciting news. Note to self, we were going to ask Patient Ping before they actually got bought out, but having said that, it's going to be exciting to hear about their trajectory, and I know a lot of young folks in the industry are excited to hear how that happened and what they learned from it. We also had a great conversation with CIC Health earlier this week. I'm actually leading a camp this summer, and CIC Health has been doing a great job with thinking about COVID testing, keeping our kids safe, but allowing them to get back out into the world this summer and be kids again. So we've got a lot of great people coming up. For the cardiologists out there, all the excitement has been Apple has announced that they are hiring a straight up clinical cardiologist to join them. And although exciting, I will remind people that that is just one position. And if you even at all feel excited about the fact that Apple wants a cardiologist or wants a clinician out there, it means that you're one of us. It means that you're an early adopter, you're a visionary, you're somebody who can even change things with digital health and tech where you are right now. So if you see yourself looking at that and going, I wonder if I could or should apply, what you should do is take a look at where you are and how you can change things, because it already means that you're a leader. So excited for that, but also for all the people who got excited by that. So for today, one of the things I think I'm most excited about, Jen, I want to hear from you as well, because you are a physician entrepreneur, is that it is sometimes challenging to start as a clinician who's kind of deep in the woods doing their clinical work and who knows what all those pain points are, who really knows the things that need to be improved upon, but can't find the space and the time to actually think, to meet people, to interact. I mean, part of the reason we do this show is to hopefully have people find those connections and find them quickly in a short amount of time. But I would love your thoughts before we bring on our guest today about just being a physician entrepreneur, and how did you do that? How did you go from the depths of being in an ER to saying, I'm going to take a step back and solve an important problem, which you did with, MedTech Boston?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for the question and bringing it up. And it was brought up recently, so I really appreciate it. I did my internal medicine training at Georgetown, my nephrology training at Mass General and Brigham. Really passionate about improving healthcare. I think there's a lot of things. I think, Ami, there's a lot of things in healthcare that could be improved. There's a lot of efficiency, digitalizations, closing the gaps in healthcare disparity that can be improved. It's hard. So I started Medstro, which is a software company, and also MedTech Boston in 2013, right out of finishing fellowship. That was a big leap. I sold them in 2018. So I did the whole co-founder CEO thing. And yeah, people don't realize that I was a CEO. And originally, the first 2 years, I was like a fake CEO. I was just like, okay, it's a tiny little startup company, and there's 3 of them. So they have to have one of them as a CEO, one of them as COO, and one as the CTO. And you could ask me questions specifically around like, what's the ideal mix?
Yeah.
But the first 2 years was like fake CEOing it. The last 3 years was full on real CEOing it, meaning we did the full startup thing. In startups, you're very cross-functional. Things are moving fast. It's hard to hire people to fill all the certain gaps. So essentially, you end up doing things. So I became very good at Scrum, Agile, product development, marketing. We never had marketing, but you can see I'm passionate about, I would call it meaningful communication about important scientific work.
Yes.
And then I also got very comfortable with the financial side. I still am not excited about finances. I can read a basic P&L. I can set up a basic QuickBooks. I'm not an accountant. That's like drives me insane. I also understood the importance of clear communication, sales, and logistics, and responding to the customer. So I did all of that. When physicians are talking with me and they're like, do I want to start my own thing? Do I want to consult? It's really difficult. The physician pathway is, especially in the US, is growing. I mean, I think we know this. We do 4 years of undergraduate, then 4 years of medical school. Then I did 3 years of internal medicine, and then 2 years of fellowship. So I was 32 before my parents were like, you're going to stop asking for like a Christmas, help me out.
No, but you're right. It's a long course. I was 35, so I am right there with you on that. And we used to have a little bit of competition. Will my kid graduate kindergarten before I graduate from medical training, right? So it's a long course, and you get to the end, and then you see some of the potential changes that only you can see as being a clinician. And you think, after all these years that I have put into this, will I walk away? Is it really walking away? I guess that's one of the questions. And I'm excited to ask JJ and Lance what they think about this too, right? Is it really walking away when you turn towards entrepreneurship? And at the same time, how do you know you're cut out for it? You were clearly a brilliant CEO. I don't even know what you mean about fake. We'll have to talk more about that, especially with Lance and JJ as well.
Oh no, I was a real fake CEO.
But that's the question. We take different routes. I am still, in the clinic 4 days a week, and yet consulting and helping and advising and growing companies, on the side. Whereas you kind of did the opposite. You said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but I'm going to keep a foot in the door in ER. And so I think that's a conversation. I'd love to have the others also kind of join in with us.
But. Oh yeah, it's a really important conversation, but it's hard. It's a sacrifice. I don't have a wonderful kitchen remodel and a beautiful living room and a husband to put in it and 2 kids roaming around.
And don't forget the dog that's being very quiet since I'm streaming from home today. God bless him.
Oh, that's right.
All of you who have pets.
I've contemplated if I have enough space for a dog. I've contemplated it a lot.
You can have mine for a while.
Good.
Well, this is so. Let's. I think.
How long do you think your dog will tolerate me? 2 hours. I'm gonna put a poll on LinkedIn. 2 hours, 4 hours, 24 hours.
We will put a poll, and you will babysit the dog. I think it'll be perfect. Our 2 guests today, we have the Chief Strategic Innovation Officer of INSIGHTEC, Arjun Desai, who is with us. We also have Thrive Labs, that's a 3 with an IVE, Thrive Labs Senior Medical Director, Lance Black, who is also an MD. So excited to have both of them with us today. And I think we can maybe bring one on, then quickly soon bring the other, but maybe we'll start with JJ first and learn a little bit about how he got to where he is today.
Yes, definitely. Welcome, JJ. Welcome, JJ.
Jen, hey, Ami, how are you guys?
Great to see you. Great to have you with us. So, JJ, this is exciting because you have not only been an entrepreneur for a company or a CEO. I think I have counted something like 20 different companies associated with your name. After a while, I could only Google so much. And I would love to hear a little bit about you because you were a straight up clinician in the beginning. And then this kind of bug caught you. And I'd love to hear a little bit about I know you were saying thinking about Texas and thinking about, all the different places, J&J, that have, made you who you are. So we'd love to have you introduce yourself a little bit to the audience and tell them your story.
Thanks, Ami. Yeah, it's a pleasure to reconnect with you guys. It's always so much fun. It's just speaking with you guys, let alone getting into doing a forum like this. So once again, thanks for having me. I guess first and foremost, I am the father of 4 crazy children and the husband of a wife who is much smarter than myself. So most of those things are what define me these days, I would say. Everything else is just lucky to have. But beyond that, I started as a clinician, knowing that I kind of wanted to always impact medicine and I wanted to do it in any form factor I possibly could. And I first thought I wanted to do it, international relief aid and travel the world and do indigenous clinics, which is kind of how I started in my transition from college to med school. And the thought was like, hey, how can I impact so many people at a different level than kind of the one-to-one interaction? And that just evolved. It evolved in getting involved with new technologies and new ideas that started from molecules to biotechnology companies, to medical device companies, and then to, the largest global healthcare organization in the world. And at every point, I always kind of said, well, am I meant to be a full-time doctor? Is that what I want to do? And that was at med school, it was at residency. And I'll tell you, the best advice I ever got was, always become a full-time doctor until you figure out that you've got another path in life. And someone described it to me as it's the best plan B you can ever have, but really it's the best plan A you can ever have. And, I remember as a medical student, I thought I knew everything and all I needed to do was get that first year of medical school. And you really know so much more as a resident and then so much more as an attending. And I think you guys obviously know that exponential creep. And once you are responsible for a patient, you can really understand technology and how to benefit them and their lives and their caregivers. So that was my path. I stayed practicing all the way through. I just really couldn't at some point with my travel schedule and my commitments. And I had spaced it out to being, an attending. I'm an anesthesiologist. So by the time that I had finished residency, my company, which was a medical device company that I was fortunate enough to be a part of, had gone public at that time. And I was transitioning then into J&J. And I just went from practicing kind of 2 days a week to a day a week. And then I remember when it was like a day a month, I just wasn't doing anyone justice, certainly not the patient. And when I had to kind of think about what my formula was, I said, okay, it's time for me to fully commit to this side now that I know it's my passion in life. So that's kind of what took me out of medicine. It wasn't an obvious overnight decision. I asked hundreds and hundreds of people, but I feel like I never really left, and I actually get to impact it more now in the ways that I'm doing it than I was as a physician. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Ami. I'll pause there and just see if—
No, it does. That's fantastic. And so a question for you, for those younger people who are watching, how many years were you in straight up clinical practice before you started foraying into— I know your route is a little different. You had some biotech and you had some pharma and you had some, and then you kind of moved in. But was it right off the bat? Did you always have a passion and you knew it, or was it some years and you kind of got clinical under your belt and then moved on?
Yeah, I always knew it. I just didn't know what it was. I always knew, after I kind of hit the ground in medical school, I always knew I was going to do something like be a doctor, and I just didn't know what the and was. And as I started to get more involved, it became more obvious to me. So I had the fortune of kind of joining kind of my third company or endeavor and startup at the early part of my residency. So, kind of 2 through medical school and the early transition to residency. And then, the last really accretive one at the beginning of residency. And I kind of got one really good piece of advice. I ended up, picking a residency where I thought it could be malleable and something that I could do outside of clinical medicine. But your number 1, 2, and 3 jobs in residency is to be the best doctor you can. And the best piece of advice I got was whatever you're going to do, 1, don't let it be a distraction. And 2, just fly under the radar and always be the best physician you can be. Because if you're ever not the best physician you can be, everything else is a distraction to both you and the program and the patient. So I did it after hours. I did it post-call. I did it weekends. I did it on nights, but I never let it creep into my role as a physician resident, which enabled me to, become chief of my program. And it was at that point that I transitioned. I never transitioned full-time, actually. I transitioned to a part-time faculty at Stanford after I graduated residency and went more full-time in my company because of the growth that was happening at that point.
Phenomenal. Great advice and great path for people to think about, especially if they're debating on going into medicine, but also know they have this love for MedTech and digital health. So I want you to tell us a little bit about J&J, but first, your new company is doing some awesome stuff, and I hear you have a video for us. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about the current company, the awesome work that you're doing, and we can share a little bit of that with the audience, and then we'll circle back around to J&J and then introduce Lance as well, who I think you met via some of those relationships.
And before we segue, I do just want to say thank you to everyone who's watching. Go ahead, feel free to post. We already have some great posts coming in. Thank you to Janice Lee for being excited about our show. This is Steve Locke. Steve, he's on the Mass Medical Society IT committee. Yay, the Apple Watch can be useful.
Fantastic. Good. And the ED at MGH thanks you very much for allowing us to get some other patients through. So that all worked out well.
And this is from Dr. Leitner, who actually runs a really impressive LGBTQ telemedicine practice. So she's saying hi. And we do have some great questions already coming in that we're planning on taking. So everyone go ahead and share. Sorry, JJ, let's get back to you.
No, you guys are the best. I love this format. It's awesome. Thanks for keeping it so light. So I have the absolute fortune of being part of an organization called INSIGHTEC, which, when you kind of equate things to what you saw in Star Trek 2 decades ago, the predictive technologies of the future, this is one of them. I actually came across this technology when we were at J&J and looking at ways of getting, combining drugs and devices in novel ways where they independently couldn't actuate as strong as they could together. And there's some initiatives within lung cancer and neurodegenerative was one of those thought processes. I came across this technology called focused ultrasound. And, I'd always heard of ultrasound like everybody had, which was to look at little babies as they're growing in the womb or to evaluate soft tissue structures and do other things. But
or the heart.
Or the heart, sorry, or the kidneys. I don't want to affray anybody for later conversations. But focused ultrasound is this beautiful elemental energy that are sound waves. And when you can take those sound waves and thousands of them in our case and focus them on one point or focus them to do something specific with a frequency, you can actually impact the way that tissue behaves and ultimately the way that you intervene on disease or pathognomonic focal points of disease. And that's what INSIGHTEC is doing, and specifically in the brain. And I'll share just a brief animation to bring it to life. But INSIGHTEC has figured out a way to get sound waves, thousands of them, through the skull, and then refocus them back down to points in the brain. And it's one platform that can kind of use 2 frequencies, one high and one low. The high frequency will actually take those thousands of elements and focus them all the way down to one tiny sub-millimeter point and create thermal energy to actually ablate. So think about doing, ablative surgery in the brain, but without ever having to open the head or the skull. No implants, no radiation, sound doesn't cause anything on the way in, doesn't cause anything on the way out. And it only actuates that effect at the physical sub-millimeter spot where everything focuses. If you go 1 millimeter over, there's no effect. So the precision is unbelievable. And we talk about it in degrees of freedom, where robotics got us, from 2 to 3 to 12 degrees of freedom in a closed space. This gets you infinite degrees of freedom in a closed space, which allows you to be much more precise if you're coming from outside the body. And then our low frequency platform, we don't cause heat. We actually open the blood-brain barrier very focally, very conformally, and combine that with drug delivery. So all of these amazing drugs that were monoclonal antibodies and CAR Ts and things that are helping solid and liquid tumors all over the body or other degenerative states that can't get into the brain, we've got this really amazing platform with some amazing early results in our clinical trials. So I'm happy to share those animations with you if that makes sense, to kind of walk through a little bit of what that looks like.
That would be great.
Always like a good joke filler why these things pop up.
I was gonna say Jen's usually full of potential jokes for that moment. Although one thing I was gonna say is we didn't know when we invited you and Lance that you guys actually knew each other as well, right? So that's a connection that small world as we invited the two of you.
Yeah,
okay,
Lance.
I kind of knew that.
Did you know that? Okay, all right, Jen.
I think they have this connection with J&J, which, I think once we have Lance out here, they'll talk about more. And then TMC, I think that's the connection.
Yeah.
And Lance, as you guys know, is just an absolute all-star. So I feel fortunate to be able to be included in this with him. Can you guys see this window?
Yeah, so I am going to share it. And is this how you wanted it to? This is totally the doctor, the doctor's going back and forth saying, I don't know what.
Doctor PowerPoint presentation. It's okay. I think our audience is forgiving.
You guys tell me how. I'm usually a keynote guy, but I went to PowerPoint on this one. So can you see the video playing?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I'm going to speak through this as it's going. There's just two small videos here. It won't take too much time. Maybe I'll just replay this one. So our system is actually this headset here. And in that headset, there's thousands of elements that are computer phased arrays. So they all speak to each other. And as a patient lays in an MRI, we use imaging and the ability to focus to get down to kind of these submillimeter points. So here we're looking at an actual anatomic target, which is the thalamic nucleus. And we're treating motor disorders. And by creating the energy, moving it, steering it, and getting to those focal points, we can actually create real-time thermal ablation, which we see as we're doing it because we're in an MR closed loop system. We measure the thermometry. We know we get to the actual efficacious endpoint, which is a certain threshold of temperature, which is 55 degrees centigrade. And the patient is awake and involved the entire time. We actually watch their movement disorders completely go away in the setting of the treatment. It's very acute. They go in with a disabling tremor and they come out looking at their limb as if it wasn't theirs because it's so stable and calm. So it's very emotional. It's very precision based. It's very real time. And beautifully, it's, in the setting of an hour in an outpatient, a patient comes in, they lay down, they walk out, they go home. This required brain surgery before. It required multi-day stays, implants, radiation, or sort of probing radioablations. And this is kind of the magic of what sound can do. And then this is the second platform where rather than create heat, drugs that go in intravenously, intraarterial, intrathecally can't get into the blood-brain barrier, which we know is a natural sort of saran wrap around the arterial bed in the brain. We use this to our advantage where with microbubbles that are injected, we pulsonicate them and create a mechanical change where these bubbles are expanding and oscillating and physically opening up the tight junctions at the BBB level. And we will paint a tumor resection bed, we'll paint an Alzheimer's plaque, or we'll paint, the degenerative portion of the striatum and have drug infused to, sort of super threshold layers in that area and only that area. And we can do it repeatedly. And this area will then close back down on itself and reconstitute the blood-brain barrier in about 24 hours. So it's really kind of this Star Trekian, how do you use sound? Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein said that frequencies are going to change the way we practice medicine, almost a century or two ago. And I think they were very right. They were very spot on with what we're trying to get accomplished at INSIGHTEC.
That's phenomenal.
Amazing. And I do just want to highlight, thank you to Ritesh Patel for joining us, Chief Digital Officer at, I don't know how to pronounce this, I'm sorry, Agility Consulting.
I'm going to go with Agility.
For you, JJ. This is so cool.
I totally agree, Ritesh. 100%.
JJ, when we look at this, it does feel Star Trekian, but you appear to actually have it in patients. Can you tell us, where this is? Is this in kind of studies? Is this being used clinically by cancer centers already? How far have you guys gotten? And I look at it, and now that I run outpatient cardiology, the fact that I look at P&Ls every day, what's the cost of this? I had to fight for my, latest CT scanner at our outlying institution. What happens? How do we actually get this to people?
Yeah. So, we feel so lucky in our clinical partners who really drive such an amazing value of evidence to support this. So we're in about 100 hospitals worldwide now. I'll kind of just stick to the US, but we're in the US, Europe, Asia. We just, got approval in China, in Brazil. We're launching. We treated our 5,000th neuro patient during the pandemic, which was a huge milestone for us. And we've treated about 20,000 patients as a company since the inception of focused ultrasound as a therapeutic. As the therapeutic platforms for the commercial, where we create the heat and the ablation for essential tremor, Parkinson's, and in Europe, things like neuropathic pain and otherwise, you can go get treated today. We're at every major most major neuro academic centers. In the last 2 years, we've then kind of gone into IDNs and a lot of the larger health systems across the country. And now we're in community hospitals that are doing amazing jobs everywhere from Nebraska City to Boulder, Colorado to North Carolina. And then certainly, you kind of name up in your neck of the woods, Brigham is an amazing program that uses our technology all across New York. On the West Coast, we've got UCSF and Stanford and UCLA and Cedars coming online. So a lot of really great programs across the US, and certainly take those and just mirror the same reputations across the world. On the BBB side of the game, once again, we're fortunate to partner with Dana-Farber and MD Anderson and all of the great neurocancer centers who are running these trials as consortias and working with great pharmaceutical partners as well. So, we feel very bullish. The programs are pretty well advanced. We've got national Medicare coverage. So fortunately, patients have access to these. We've got national coverage in the UK and Germany and France and Japan. And we're working hard to where access is never a limitation for patients. And then any hospital can procure this. It's a pretty simple sales cycle. We fit right into most standard MRs, so you don't need to buy a whole new MR. A lot of people now are just dedicating MRs to be purely therapeutic because there's such a demand for this on the patient side. But we think it's a really reasonable capital side sale for a hospital, and they see that within 1 year. So it seems to be a pretty resolute sales cycle from that perspective.
That's phenomenal.
Feedback from the audience who is watching. Thank you, Thomas Joel, for calling out the great explanation that JJ did. I agree. It was a great explanation, a good explanation. It was my first introduction to focused ultrasound platforms. So I don't know if you've worked in Virginia or not. You don't.
Yeah. So this is one of the other benefits. CVIL, which I hadn't actually been to Charlottesville, UVA's before. The Focused Ultrasound Foundation, led by a gentleman named Neil Cassell, who himself was a neurosurgeon and saw the value of this technology, is just an amazing advocacy program and institution in the space. They support up to $10 million a year of basic and translational research all the way through clinical. So they've really built so much of the body of evidence. All of our evidence comes out of randomized clinical trials that are in the New England Journal of Medicine and Science and Nature. And a huge part of that is the work the Focused Ultrasound Foundation, Dr. Cassell and his entire staff do there. So we work very closely with them, and we'll continue to do so. It's important for any new technology to have an ally like that.
That's great. Little known fact, I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. Jen, I don't think you know this. I was at Yale. And if you're at Yale and you meet the neurosurgery department, you can't possibly want to do anything else. They were just phenomenal. Now, this was 2 decades ago. I'm sure they're even more phenomenal now. But cardiology, grabbed my heart, no pun intended. And so I went in that direction. But I will say that
okay, that's cute. That's I like that cardiologist.
Thank you. See, right? Okay.
Your heart. I need to have something more for grab my kidneys. But maybe that's to segue us into Lance.
That will segue us to Lance. That's right. But I will say that for patients, what a night and day experience this must be. Because when you say, I can picture patients coming out and not seeing their tremor, but I remember that the cancer patients, that journey was one of the longest and hardest that I have seen people make it through or not make it through for a long time, decades ago, especially. And so, what an impressive ability to be able to not only cure the patients, change their quality of life, but have them approach a journey in a way where it's not as terrifying as it once was of a diagnosis because of the existence of focused ultrasound and what you're doing. So really phenomenal for patient experience and just changing the image of healthcare, especially in those cancer patients. So this is great. Should we bring on Lance and then we'll do some more video with JJ? I think we have some more videos, but I feel like Lance is here and ready to jump in.
Yes, so excited to welcome Lance Black.
Hey, Jen. Hey, Ami. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you with us, Lance. And of course, you know JJ well. So we have dived into so many things that I know, Lance, you have so many great thoughts on, ranging from entrepreneurship to how to take one's course from kind of medical into the digital health field. I would love to make sure to get to how the two of you met. And then, Lance, you told me Boston, San Francisco, watch out, because Houston and Miami are now the place to be for digital health, for med tech, and for growth. So we're going to have to get to that too. But will you start by maybe, you've joined Thrive recently. I know you had quite a course getting there, by letting our audience know a little bit more about you and your course and how you've gotten to here. That'd be great.
My pleasure. JJ, I knew you were into some cool stuff, but I didn't think it was that cool. So congratulations, buddy.
Thanks, Lance. That's not coming from you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, man. So the beginning of my journey, I think, starts in undergrad when I was a biological engineer, and fell in love with one of the classes that I took in my senior year. It was called Capstone. It's an opportunity to kind of showcase all of your engineering talents in one cumulative course. We met a patient who had post-polio syndrome, and they were looking for a leg brace that would allow them to walk with a normal gait, but also catch them if they actually fell, because in post-polio, you don't know when your leg is going to give out sometimes. And we, as little engineering nerd team, developed a orthotic that was analogous to somewhat of a seat belt. So it allowed for full range of motion. And when there was this high accelerative force, it would catch them. And after that, I think I saw like my future. This is what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. I really didn't know a lot about the course of becoming a physician, what it took to go into medical school. I didn't even know what residency was about. I just knew that I wanted to be in the healthcare space, and I knew I wanted to be developing solutions like I did that one year. So I went into med school kind of blindsided. I didn't have any mentors that were physicians, have no physicians in my family. Like I said, I didn't even know what residency was. When I went to med school, I was like, oh crap, there's more training after school. So I didn't realize that until after I got in. In
I think
medicine,
it's a good idea if people don't know. I think it's better.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of stumbling in the dark a little bit there. And in medicine, I just kind of once again fell in love with a little bit of everything. I really enjoyed working with patients. I enjoyed talking to them. I enjoyed building that relationship. So I knew I wanted to be a clinician and have time to spend and grow with a patient and help them as much as I could. But I always tell people, being trained as an engineer sort of ruined me as a physician, because being trained as an engineer taught me to look for problems and seek them out and then try to develop new creative solutions or novel solutions. And it's not something as physicians we're necessarily incentivized to do. We're incentivized to see the patient, put into practice things that have already been researched for us, and take care of them and see the next patient. And in family medicine, which is the career that I chose, you're seeing 25 to 35 patients a day. You don't have a whole lot of time to be creative and come up with new treatment regimens. You're not paid to do that. You're paid to see the next patient. And so I found myself very frustrated very quickly outside of residency. And I knew almost immediately that this is not what I want to be doing full time, is seeing patients, for the next 25 years. I was in the military at the time, so I was sort of forced, if you will, to practice medicine for at least the next 4 years, which was my commitment. And I'm actually really thankful for that opportunity, because had it not been for that, I probably would have left medicine after the first 6 months. That's how quick I knew it wasn't what I wanted to be doing. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned, Ami, at the beginning of the show, how there's a lot of sacrifice, and how do you step out? Do you completely give it up? And JJ mentioned how, a mentor told him to stay with it, at least have a plan A/plan B. I didn't know what I was doing. And so I just looked for other opportunities in the healthcare innovation space. I found a landing spot at Georgia Tech, actually, in a program that's called Biomedical Innovation and Development. It's very similar to some things that JJ's been through with Stanford Biodesign, where they teach you, from concept through commercialization, the steps required to get a product to market. And that's where I found, like, oh, this is what I was cut out to be doing. This is what I want to do. Now, what my role is in that process, I still hadn't figured out by that time, but I did give up medicine full time. And I I don't necessarily regret it, but I do say it was a very challenging time for me. I tell people, I don't know if this is an appropriate analogy, but I tell people it's kind of like going through a divorce. I spent so much time and effort, sacrifice to build this relationship with medicine, and a lot of energy, a lot of time. And I fell in love with it for the most part, and then at the end I fell out of love with it. It's like, oh, this is what it is. It's actually not about necessarily spending a lot of time with patients, or taking care of them as the way that you want to take care of them. It's about just going through the next cycle. And so I had this like falling out of love with medicine, and that's where I think it was really tough to kind of pull that or separate those two emotions in my mind. And so when I joined the program at Georgia Tech, it allowed me to kind of respect the process and understand where physicians can play a role. It doesn't always have to be the CEO. It could be an advisor, it could be a board member, it could be a CMO, it could be a lot of different things. And that really opened up my eyes to see what's possible. I joined a product development firm in Atlanta and got exposure to a lot of innovative physicians, clinicians, and entrepreneurs who were producing medical devices. And it was my role there to kind of understand the clinical utility and how to translate clinical needs into design specifications for an engineer. So I found myself becoming this, translation or translator of languages. I understood the engineering language, I understood the clinical language. So I was just in between and saying, this is what this clinician is saying, but this is what they really want when it comes to designing a product. And I did that for a few years until I moved over to TMC in Houston about 5 years ago. And that's where JJ and I actually first met. And TMC Innovation is a collection of programs to support the growth and density of healthcare startups in Houston, because we understand and respect the great differentiator of the Texas Medical Center. And let me tell you just a little bit about TMC real quick. It's a collective of independent health systems, research organizations, and academic institutions. And in fact, there's what we call 60 member institutions involved. And so within 2 square miles, you have more healthcare being delivered than in the city of Boston and the city of San Francisco. It's kind of crazy how densified it is, and it's all within arm's reach of where TMC Innovation has proximity. And so through TMC Innovation, we have an accelerator, we have incubator, we have corporate partners like J&J. We have multiple network and stakeholders that allow us to help bring products to market. And that's either attracting them from other places, which is great because we can help them secure great clinical partnerships, or it's building our own. And we've been doing that now for 6+ years and have had some great success. And the big differentiator that I point to is we have great healthcare enterprise partners who are willing to innovate, who are willing to partner in unique ways with healthcare startup companies. And then most recently, I made the move to Thrive Labs, which is where I'm at now, which I'm really excited to share with you more about in a minute. And what I do there is I'm the senior medical director. I help support ongoing clinical trials and trying to find strategies where our product can have the biggest impact for patients. So I'm excited about where I'm landing, but still have a lot to go.
So really inspirational
Amazing.
story.
So
that was my
much
first time
contact.
hearing the story.
Go ahead, Jen.
And it was also my first time meeting Lance, actually. Or this is the second time. We did a whole test a few days ago. That was just really inspirational, so enlightening. And we have some feedback from the audience. Dr. Nivedita Tiwari says, Dr. Lance, thank you for sharing your story. And now we also have Matteo Trisolini. Dr. Lance Black, I love your story. Thank you for sharing. It was you did a very good job. Very inspirational.
I was going to say there is so much to unpack in what you've said so far, right? So just starting from the beginning, being a family practitioner or a primary care doc right now, especially in the United States, God bless everybody who does that. It is hard. The need is significant. The number of doctors are not, and nurses and physician assistants are not nearly enough altogether. And it's hard to take the time to think when you know that there's so much you could make better, when really we're doing almost kind of secondary prevention, right? A lot of what we do is kind of running to put out fires in addition to the primary prevention we're trying to provide. For those who are interested in Medium or sometimes pick up good articles in there, please look up Lance Black in Medium, because if you love the way he speaks, the way he writes is phenomenal, but you use the phrase EMR became your kryptonite. And that feeling really resonates with the kind of administrative burden that physicians and nurses are feeling today. And so I can imagine it did feel like really divorcing yourself from something that you were dedicated to doing in order to now really contribute to healthcare, and almost do it better. You found that synergistic point that we all want, where you understand the clinical problem and then you translate it for us. So what a story. It's really kind of impressive for people to hear, and I think easy for a lot of people out there to relate to. And now you've moved towards an arena, specifically because Jen and I come from these worlds, that encompasses some nephrology and some cardiology all together, which is exciting at Thrive Labs. Do you want to just share a little bit about that? And then I want to hear more about TMC. I know all the people from CIC up here in Boston are like, what do you mean TMC is so awesome? Because there are a lot of really great cities and places that are trying to bring groups together. But maybe if you wanted to share a little bit of the video that you have, tell us a little bit about Thrive,
Sure.
and then we can
Happy to do that. Should we just hash it out now? Which one's better, the heart or the kidneys, or how do you guys want to go about that?
They are simpatico, my friend.
That's right.
We are necessary for one another.
They're best friends until they're not best friends, and then they're just enemies, right?
We have well, I would say we have a strong relationship with cardiologists in the hospital, and that you are like often in my field of view, paging me about something, sometimes yelling at me.
Wow.
We like to call it expressing the urgency of the matter. That's what we like to call it, expressing the urgency of the matter.
There's a tension.
I feel like I've heard that before. Yeah.
Beautiful.
We can all agree that the brain controls them both, right? So
wow, there you go.
There he is.
JJ is like that kid in the classroom in the back that says, raises his hand and says, actually, you're wrong, professor. That's JJ.
They're all equally important. All of them.
So we're about to see Lance's video. I do want to just say thanks to Dr. Locke, a psychiatrist specializing in behavioral telehealth and digital mental health, founder and CMO of I Hope Network. And he just says, this is just showing you the love, Ami. He loves the show. So back to Lance. So we're going to watch Lance. We're going to hear about Thrive Labs.
Yeah, I'm excited to share with you. And just a little bit of a preface. I mean, I'm sure many of your audience members know this, but renal congestion and how it affects patients in a multitude of settings has become growingly and increasingly a difficult thing to treat. As the interstitial pressure rises in the kidney, and because the kidneys are retroperitoneal, or to use JJ's analogy, wrapped in saran wrap, like the blood-brain barrier, there's little room for them to expand and to compensate these fluid shifts. And so when there's a fluid overload, they just get compressed and the blood flow is essentially compromised. And so one of the areas where Thrive Labs is really trying to have the biggest impact is in cardiorenal syndrome, where this backflow or problem occurs. The backflow or the venous flow really becomes such a problem. It doesn't matter how much blood is getting to the kidneys. If there's no outflow, then it's like adding cars to a traffic jam. All you're doing is making the traffic jam worse, right? And so the kidney needs some sort of outlet, and that's where Juxtaflow is really trying to make the biggest difference. I'm going to just advance the video here a second and show you the novel therapy that we're introducing, which is called negative pressure diuresis. And it's administered by a very simple yet elegant device known as the Juxtaflow system. It's a catheter that's inserted into the ureter and sits in the renal pelvis and then exerts a gentle suction. And because the collecting system is connected all the way to the nephron through a non-interrupted fluid column, any pressure you exert in the pelvis, renal pelvis, is going to be felt at each of the 1 million plus nephrons. And that creates a differential in pressure enough to alleviate that backflow pressure or that congestion and pull fluid off of the kidney. And so we've shown in animals already we're able to increase urine output by 30% in some cases, but more importantly, improve GFR, glomerular filtration rate, which shows that the function of the kidney is returning. And so we often think about the kidney as, oh, it's just a complicated filter, but it's much more than that, right? There's bone health involved, there's blood pressure control, there's acid-base a balance. And if you're not restoring the kidney, then you're not restoring all these other functions. And so our job is to put the kidney back to work, and we think Juxtaflow will do just that.
This is great. So for those people who haven't heard me kind of talk about this before, when we think about some of the most costly diseases that are out there right now to the healthcare system, and in terms of just morbidity for individuals, it's very clear that heart failure is at the top of that list. And when we say heart failure, it can be either a stiff heart or a weak heart. But one of the big problems that we see is this backup of pressure and of fluid. So fluid in the lungs, inability to really breathe, fluid throughout the body affecting the belly, the liver, the lower extremities, and advanced heart failure that ends up being in the hospital costs the system a considerable amount. Patients often come through the ER, causing, some of that backup we talked about that can't just be relieved by having an Apple Watch tell you something. And really prolonged admissions with a lot of need for social support in addition to medical support. And so the sooner we can treat those patients both in the hospital, which I think is partly where you are now, Lance, but even as I look at this technology, the more effective we can make things like diuresis, make those kidneys, sorry, Jen, but just do your job. And then the heart can actually, be able to feel a little bit of relief from that pressure. Would save just millions of dollars in our healthcare system. So I think this is such an important area to attack.
Steve said,
here she comes.
Fabulous graphic and video. The heart has 4 chambers. Did you see all of that with the kidney? Did you see all of that going on? This intricate, interweaving pressure, backing up, fluid flowing. We're doing crazy important stuff. So much that the body was like, oh, the kidney's doing so much important stuff. I should have a backup. So I'm going to make 2.
That's true.
That is 1 point for Jennifer today. You get that. That is excellent. Well, so, as we look at this is what we're talking about right now, right? Physicians who wanted to really make a difference have gone out into doing entrepreneurship, have brought digital health to the forefront and really changed how we're doing things. And I know our audience is full of people saying, I want to embark on that course. I'm certain there are people out there who are saying, I love what I do, but being a clinician is hard right now. And I'm really invested. I have great ideas. I have great clinical experience. Where do they go? Where do they go from here? You guys talked about TMC. You guys told us about Houston and Miami. We have CIC here in Boston, but realistically, what are the next steps for people? Where would you recommend people go? And then let's go back and have all 3 of you address that one question. If you do have a company, for our entrepreneurs out there, how do you decide if you're going to be that CEO or not? Do you find a CEO? Do you become the CEO? What qualities or skill sets do you need to do that? I know there's not a prescription for this, but would love to hear your thoughts. And maybe, Lance, we can start with you, and then JJ and Jen, if that works, for these kind of ideas.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm obviously biased, having worked with TMC Innovation and seeing the great effects that it has when you have a community of healthcare founders and entrepreneurs that are, collectively thinking about how to advance their product and advance their business. And so I truly believe accelerators and hubs like that we created at TMC are where you should go, or at least where you first should start to look, because it's a magnet, right? It's a magnet for people like you who want to make a difference with technology and want to impact the lives of patients through healthcare entrepreneurship. And so being around like-minded individuals will help to clarify what opportunities exist for you. So I often point people towards accelerators and say, look, find a company that looks interesting to you and reach out to them. Startups, operate, they're kind of like wild animals. They don't put nice and neat job postings all the time on, the website. A lot of times they're, opportunistic. And so if you reach out to them, you say, hey, I'm a physician, I'm interested in talking to you more about your product, you can find opportunities just like that. And it could be as an advisor, it could be as a clinical trial lead or a principal investigator, it could be as a number of different involvements. I'm not saying you have to leave your clinical practice and go join the company, but you'll never know until you actually do the homework and reach out to companies that, pique your interest. So I would say start there with accelerators or local hubs, and find, those companies that are of interest to you.
JJ, thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think, at the most simplest format, it's just show up. And, I think Lance used beautiful analogies here. There's so many community platforms now, whether it's a university, it's TMC, it's a J Labs, it's CIC. There's just so many little pods, community pods of folks that are working on these things. There's virtual pods, there's Angel MD, MBX, all sorts of different ways that healthcare folks can get involved and almost filter through opportunities. And most people, I think, are hesitant to show up because they don't think it's going to be the perfect solution for what they're looking for, but just show up and just like say hi. And as soon as you do that, you'll be amazed who else is in the room. I think the first time I met Lance, I just showed up. I was like, what are they doing over in Texas? A couple of Stanford guys had left, Bobby Robbins and Bill McKean, and they were talking about Texas Medical Center. And I just showed up. And geez, I walk in the door and you meet someone as fabulous as Lance and then all the other folks there. And that little trip changed my life. So, had I not gone on that airplane and taken the time for a couple of days to go check it out, I never would have known the path there. That's just the easiest and most resolute. The second one is find great mentors and just don't be bashful. Keep knocking on their doors. I try to answer every med student or resident that writes to me. I will definitely answer and try to take any call I can because I was that guy. And it was those conversations that really helped me on my path. So just be persistent and show up. I think those are the two things that really helped me.
I think one of the things that JJ and I have in common is we had a great mentor through Dr. Billy Cohn, who's still in Houston and now runs JJ's Center for Device Innovation. I was in Atlanta. I reached out to him on LinkedIn randomly, some no name, and said, hey, I'd like to talk to you. He called me from the operating room and just started talking to me. And he's the one that actually convinced me to come to Houston. And saying it's a similar story with JJ is about, opportunities. It's people like that will change the course of, your career. And so I definitely just want to echo the mentor piece. And in return, I'm the exact same way as JJ. If somebody links in, message me or emails me, I do everything I can to return their call because I think it's so important, especially in our small community.
That's so true. That's so true. I will say the same is probably true for the reverse for those young entrepreneurs that out there who have your device or your system or your solution. If you reach out to those of us who are clinicians and say, hey, look, I just need advice. I need help with this. I need to figure out how it fits in, whether or not you're going to use this. I think the same thing holds. If you're a young person with a company, you just reach out and keep knocking on doors and you will find people like myself and Jen and even JJ and Lance who will reach out back and say, hey, happy to think about trialing this, or let me connect you with someone who could, or happy to advise you. So I think it's a two-way street in that those who are looking for more entrepreneur experience reach out, and those who are looking for more clinical knowledge, reach out in that direction too. Dr. Joe, you proposed this question. I'm going to give it right back to you, especially the part about can anybody be a CEO? I mean, that's hard to hear. And we see the three of you and we think, well, of course you're chief strategy and of course you're senior medical director. But when someone's looking at can I really run something? How do you know?
So I think that's a great question. And I want to say that believe in yourself. So I definitely think this applies to young women. And I think about this when I think about how do I give ambition to young women. And I say this because I also read the Bumble founder story again today. Amazing story. The woman who founded Bumble. And it's great. She took it, IPO'd, it was this wonderful billionaire story. But the piece that I don't like about it is that she did it because she was in a relationship. She had all these visions and she wasn't being taken seriously. How do I take that and say, hey, you don't have to do it reactively. You can believe in yourself, have that ambition, and go ahead and do it. So talk to good people. Lance and JJ are great people. It's not right for everyone. And I personally just think about this because I sold my company and then I integrated it. And it was just a lot. It was a lot to CEO a company. I think CEOs know that. And then as I moved through my 40s, just ask myself if I want to do it again. And I don't know. But I do want to make sure I want to instill ambition in the young women, the young boys, the people of color, and also clinicians who see a problem, whether that's nurses, physician assistants, respiratory therapists. The system's not built for us. It's not built to like in an ideal way. There's a lot of healthcare, IT, digital health, workflow improvements that can be had, but you're there on the ground. I want you to give yourself the ambition and belief in yourself. I think we are wrapping up. This has been like a super long, really amazing show. We have a whole lot of questions that I just really apologize we were not able to get to. But we are here every Tuesday. And also the Mass Medical Society IT committee that I belong to. We do great work. Steve Black is again saying great show. And maybe we should close out with some ending words from everyone. We'll start with Lance first.
Sure. So thanks so much, Jen and Ami, for having me. It's been my pleasure. And I will echo Jen's comments and just have the faith that you can do this. I mean, most CEOs come from the most unreal, abnormal backgrounds. It's not a classic traditional path that we a lot of times are grown accustomed to. So take the time to find somebody that you trust and you can open up to. And I think that will be something that could be, the start of something to change your career. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. JJ?
Yeah, my strongest conviction is to always surround yourself with people that are just so much smarter and more adept than you. I have the fortune of being around 3 of you guys today and so many more later in the afternoon. So the more you can do that with humility and sort of just throwing yourself right in the middle of it, the more those people will help you and the more you'll learn. So just continue to be around the smartest people you can.
Great. I'm going to throw my word in because I think this physician entrepreneurship concept is one that comes up so often. And I will say, I think I have decided I'm going to change the phrase that I use based on today's discussion. We are not leaving medicine. We are growing medicine. We are improving upon medicine. We are not leaving medicine. I think we should leave that word behind because I think that makes it much harder for us to really make the medical and healthcare field in the United States and probably throughout the world, but I can speak for the US, makes it hard for us to make it better when we create a dichotomy that actually shouldn't exist. So I would say growing it, having fun doing it, making things better for patients and for the system. That's clearly what JJ Desai and Lance Black are doing. Jen Jo, it's what you're doing as well. And it's what all of us clinician wannabe entrepreneurs are looking to do someday. So Jen, I will give you the last word. And guys, it's just been a great show. I think we could go on forever, but I want to respect your time and our audience's time. We will answer the questions offline. JJ and Lance will ask you to do the same. If we could just on LinkedIn and our other areas, we'll try to get back to you online through social media. Jen, leave you with the last word.
Yep. So thank you for joining us. This is MedTech Insights with me, Jennifer Jo, co-host Ami Bhatt. We are here every Tuesday at 12 noon with new digital health, telemedicine, healthcare innovating leaders. So be sure to follow it. Thank you, everyone.